Go Mets fans, it's Wardy here, and we're back at it with our latest live edition of latest Mets news and rumors to get into. And yet again, it's a jam-packed episode, that being January 21st here. And I know it's right in the heart of the Knicks versus Nets at the moment, so I apologize. I probably offended a lot of people, and I didn't realize at first what time the game was tonight, so that's shame on me. I'm a Knicks fan, and know we got Knicks and Nets fans in here, so good luck to you guys, both sides, and hopefully we have ourselves a great ball game between the two. But guys, we got to lock in. We got plenty to break down tonight. All right, we're going to start with the Hall of Fame reaction there. What were the results of Carlos Beltran, David Wright, and most importantly to many, especially given it was his final year, that being in Mr. Billy Wagner. From there, we're going to get into not only the Hall of Fame reaction, but what is happening here with the LA Dodgers as they continue to make moves and the immediate impact it has on the Mets and others across Major League Baseball. Yet another huge reliever added to their pen for the 2025 season. The latest on Pete Alonso, everybody. Where do the Mets stand on that front? Where do teams like the Toronto Blue Jays, among others, stand? And how are things still looking, in my opinion, the opinions of many, still fairly likely that Alonso will reach a reunion with the Mets when everything is said and done. And speaking of reunions and speaking of relievers, we talked about the Dodgers. We'll talk about how the Mets may have the perfect response here. It has everything to do with a veteran reliever that we know plenty here on the platform, along with Jerkson Profar. Is he still a potential fit for this Mets team? Could the Mets land Alonso and Profar this offseason? Will they land either of them? That and much more. Low and maybe some rotation talk before we wrap up the show is what we will deep dive and get into. Thank you guys so much for spending some of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this with your guy Wardy, your number one stop shop for all things Mets news, rumors, in-game live streams, post-game live stream reactions. We have you covered for all things Mets here on YouTube. Let's do a roll call now in the chat, folks, and then let's get this party going. Again, thank you guys so much for taking your time this evening. We got a lot to get into, and I don't want to waste any time, and I do apologize for just running that graphic for just a quick second there. But we got Brian, Poison, Corey, Scott H, how you doing? Seth, how you doing? Michael, Zach Flakerton, Leo, great member. Brandon, great member of 3 months. Wardy, are we getting a major bat, if not Alonso? We'll talk about that. There are no trade rumors with Mr. J Ram, so anyone insinuating that is talking right out of their you-know-what. So, no, there's nothing with J Ram. He isn't going anywhere. And Vladdy, especially after Anthony Santander lands in Toronto, I'm going to go on a limb and say the obvious. The Blue Jays are not trading Vladdy until at earliest the trade deadline, and that's if he is dealt. Raul, how you doing? Giovanni, Rubber Duck, Wilfredo, Bill, Brooklyn Blaze, Enrique, Patrick, Dominic, great member, how are you? Eddie, great member, how are you? Carlos, how you doing? Ethan K, longtime follower. Michael Nixon, great member and moderator, going up the list here. Truman Quinn, how you doing, my friend? Steve, hello. Michael Levinson, thank you so much for taking the time. Joe B, thank you guys. Come one, come all. If I miss anyone's name, please know that I am not purposely doing that. We just got hundreds of people that naturally chime in the live show basically every single night. I'm always grateful for that. And naturally, I'm going to miss some comments as the show goes, especially as we get in the flow state of talking about every single topic in more of a bolted fashion. But we're going to let it rip right now, everybody. So again, thank you once more. Appreciate the donation as well from Cameron Kier, a great follower here on the platform, stating with a $10 donation, MLB is in the same situation as the NHL from 20 years ago. And I remember that NHL lockout from 20 years ago, if that's what you're referring to. Teams can't keep up because RSNs are going bankrupt. Might be the longest lockout in history. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be good. I really think when we come to the next CBA between obviously the players union there and Manfred and everyone else in co, it's going to be a messy situation, and it's going to be a long-lasting time before I think they reach a resolution. Not something I wish. It just feels inevitable with how lopsided the game continues to be, how Steve Cohen was viewed as enemy number one when he first became owner, so much that the league had to go out of their way to put a 90+% tax in because of Steve Cohen once you reach a certain amount of dollars you spend. But of course, that only mattered when the Mets were spending, even though that they weren't properly spending, you could argue, in certain areas with the Grizzly veterans like the Scherzers and the Verlanders, when you have the LA Dodgers doing what the LA Dodgers are doing. Yes, Rome wasn't built overnight. This has been a decade-long process for the Dodgers to get to where they have now been over the past year, and they deserve credit, absolutely, for getting there. But again, when you look at where small market owners are at fault and where major market owners are not doing anything wrong unless you're not spending, that reaches us with a lot when talking about the CBA and how interesting things are going to be. And again, I, like you, fully expect there to be, if not a lockout, then certainly just a really, really messy negotiation, even if there really isn't much of a lockout. But if we had one a couple years ago, yeah, I'm feeling very confident we're going to have one again, unfortunately. Ghostway, great moderator. Happy to have you in here. Corey, how you doing? Tim Dog, great follower. Oh, good. Kevin Weiss, thank you so much for taking the time. Darren, Bobby G, great members. Happy to have you in here, everybody. All right. Das, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Getting compliments early tonight, guys. Just when I thought I was down, you're bringing me back up. Thank you kindly for that. Jacob, my amazing editor, happy to have you in here as well. To all my replay viewers, please let us know in the comments down below your biggest takeaway from tonight's live show. And make sure to smash that like and subscribe button because look at that, guys. Breaking news. We have hit 31,000 subscribers on the platform, first and foremost. Thank you guys so much. I can't believe we got a 31,000 Mets fan crowd for the most part, and other fan bases, but majority Mets here, and I'm very humbled and grateful to be in the position that I am as we're now entering year 5 here. Well, really year 4 because we started in December of 2020, but still or year 4, year 5, regardless. Very happy to be here and very excited to see what 2025 is going to bring. And as I promised each and every one of you, because we have now hit another 1,000 subscriber milestone, we gave away a Juan Soto Mets jersey when we hit 30K. Now that we have hit 31K, everybody, drum roll please. Yes, we are going to be giving away a Mets jersey of whatever player that you want that I can get made for you, either custom made there in the MLB shop. And all you guys will need to do for your chance to enter the Mets jersey giveaway is by simply subscribing to the platform and making sure you're chiming into a live stream right around a week from now. Barring changes, we will be live next Monday or Tuesday for one of our typical Mets free agent frenzy / latest news and rumors live show. And in those specific segments, and I'll post on the community tab ahead of time so you guys know what advance notice. All you guys will need to do is make sure you're subscribed, chime in the live chat, and make sure that you guys in the live stream are commenting in the chat. And I'll randomly select on one comment, just like I did for the Soto giveaway. Whoever I select will get your information through email or DM over X, and we'll get you hooked up with the giveaway. So again, thank you guys for the endless support. Happy to be giving that your way, whether it's a Juan Soto shirt jersey, whether it's a Pete Alonso one, should he return over the next week or so, whatever it may be. Again, we appreciate every single one of you. But all right, enough of me yapping more than I typically do. Let's get into the big news on the Hall of Fame, everybody. Carlos Beltran, David Wright, and Mr. Billy Wagner, all players that we feel are beyond deserving, or at least 2 of the 3 that we feel are beyond deserving to be in the Hall. And Billy, in his final year, in his 10th year as eligibility for the voter to write him in there for the Hall of Fame ballot, he has officially went in. Billy Wagner, one of the best relievers that Major League Baseball's ever saw, one of the nastiest southpaws in the game that apparently has even thrown 100 miles per hour with his right arm, which is just so hard to fathom. Billy Wagner, long overdue, is going to be now in the MLB Hall of Fame forever. Congratulations to Wagner and his entire family, everyone that he has positively impacted. Not only did Wagner have himself an illustrious career, but he proved exactly how we need to get over the norms of basing things based on strictly games played and innings. Billy Wagner has now the least amount of innings among any eligible pitcher in MLB Hall of Fame history at this point, but his accolades and what he has done over that span have been amongst the most dominant in the game leading up to today, present time. So Billy Wagner, congratulations. Carlos Beltran, I'm saying congratulations in advance because he had over 70% of the vote. Sadly, he was not voted in yet, but he's awfully close. There's a great reality that Carlos Beltran will be in the Hall in a Mets hat there a year from now in 2026. David Wright, even though that he is unfortunately not anywhere close to being voted in the Hall, he is staying on the ballot as he has reached at least that 5% minimum of voters to vote said player in. He was at 8% over this past voting. When we look at other people across Major League Baseball, everybody, we saw fantastic news. Ichiro himself, Ichiro Suzuki, has in fact been voted almost unanimously. There was one person that didn't vote for Ichiro, so whoever that one was, you're an absolute schmuck and you're a despicable human being that prioritized yourself first over what facts are, and that is Ichiro was beyond deserving to be completely swept, voted in right away. One of the best pure contact hitters that we've ever seen in Major League Baseball history, and the fact that he came to the States after dominating as much as he did there overseas to then have as illustrious of a career that he did there with the Mariners, with the Yankees, across everyone in Major League Baseball, is slim to none. Jaw-dropping, fantastic play. I'm grateful that I got a chance to watch Ichiro more in the second half of his career there as he was really getting towards an end, and it is amazing to see him get in the Hall right away, but a damn shame that was not unanimous the way that was supposed to be. When we also talk about guys that were deserving across town there, no denying CC Sabathia gets the vote in. CC, not only a fantastic arm there in his early career in Cleveland, but most importantly in his World Series championship years there with the New York Yankees. Yankees. He is now cemented in history there, a part of the Hall. Congratulations to everyone that was voted in this year's class. That's absolutely amazing to see. If anyone else was voted in, can you guys please let me know? I think that those were the only players. I don't believe I missed on anyone. I don't believe Utley got in, thankfully. Again, knocking on wood. But if I did miss on anyone, please let me know, because I was recording ad reads separately that will be posted for future content while the Hall of Fame voting was happening earlier, right around 6 p.m. Eastern. But guys, awesome stuff there, and some really cool stats I'd love to share here on Billy. And shout out to Robin Cypress here on X for some of these numbers I'd love to share with each and every one of you. Just take a look at these, everybody. Just, again, a chef's kiss thing here. Okay, Billy the Kid Wagner finally named to the MLB Hall of Fame. Listen to these stats, everybody. A 187 a 187 ERA plus. That is absolutely disgusting. He was almost double better than the average pitcher in baseball. That is how good he was, everybody. Then we look at the 2.39 career ERA. The K to 9, again, ridiculous. The best in the game at roughly 12K per 9. Over 400 saves club. Only 8 in history have done this. 30 save seasons. 9. Just absurd. A 187 opponent batting average. A sub-1 whip for himself. An all-star there with 4 teams, including our Metropolitans. Billy Wagner, congratulations on once again being inducted into the Hall of Fame. Kevin Medina, thank you so much for the $5 haul. I appreciate that. Kevin goes on to say, when Carlos gets in the Hall, does that get him his number retired with the Mets? Has to, right? 2 Mets in the Hall have numbers retired. I would be surprised if it didn't happen, considering how few Mets are in the Hall as is. So yeah, for that alone, I can see the thought process behind it, but we'll wait and see naturally. I haven't put too much thought into that personally, but it's a fair question though, Kevin, and I appreciate you asking it. Let me see here, everybody. Let me just pull up, make sure I had everything set from a second ago. And also, this is why I wanted to leave you with the final note on the Billy Wagner front. This was his reaction to finally being inducted into the Hall.
Hello? Latin phrase, sui generis.
This is him.
One of a kind, uniqueness. Here's a look at what made Ichiro, Ichiro. Behold the warrior. Weathering radiant, eyes focused, the mind like a mountain lake. Calm, clear, deep. That's a flash of the past. The walls covered with automobiles.
Thank you.
Like an eagle in the air, or a fish in the sea. Ichiro on
Awesome stuff. Congratulations once more to the Wagner family. You could definitely tell that that was bottled up. You know, he was so close last year. The fact that he only missed by 5 votes was a damn shame. But thankfully, in the final year, they finally got it right. They finally got it done. And what is a voting system that I think is completely flawed, where the best player in the game isn't even a part of it, and we can have those respective debates on another time, and that's completely fine. I will say they finally got it right when it came to this one. So appreciate you guys again for chiming in live on a replay, folks, as we're breaking down the latest in Mets land, just live reacting to the Hall of Fame voting today, where finally Billy Wagner was inducted in. We'll see if Carlos Beltran gets in as soon as next year, and if David Wright slowly but surely continues to climb up his leaderboard on that front. Now, folks, let's pivot into some other key topics to share with each and every one of you. Bobby G, great member, with an awesome question saying, Wardy, do you agree Ed Kranepool should have his number retired? I'm not opposed to that at all. Ed Kranepool, again, is deemed by many as Mr. Met. You know, when you think of some of the best players in Mets history and the guys who have been long-lasting, especially from start to finish, there are a few guys that have become a greater thought than Ed Kranepool, especially in his start up there, growing up a fan, literally being a part pretty much from the start, and to be with the Mets as long as he was, and to have as many accolades as he does, as much of the hits god as he was over the years as well. Ed Kranepool, I definitely think you can make that argument. It's a damn shame that he's no longer with us. I was just saying the other day, after we just found out the news that Jeff Torborg, the former Mets skipper there back from the mid-90s, has sadly passed away over the past couple days. It's been a damn shame to see the amount of Mets alumni, whether they're players or former skippers that have passed in recent years, and it never makes it easier to see all the new news that comes out, but hopefully nothing for a long period of time on that front. But all right, guys, let's get into this one. I want to see your reactions to it all, everybody, and how we're feeling not only about the haul, but everything else, because now I want to get into a perfect conversation and expanded conversation briefly here on the LA Dodgers, because the LA Dodgers did the thing yet again, everybody. They brought in Mr. Kirby Yates. Kirby Yates, an arm that we talked about plenty on the platform. We talked about how Kirby Yates honestly would have been one of the best fits for the Mets available in the free agent market after bringing in AJ Minter, because the Mets are pretty much one more arm away from, I think we can all sit here and say, yeah, we're pretty comfortable heading into the year in the bullpen. Like, you can never be too comfortable with a pen, even with having it look sexy on paper, because injuries inevitably happen, down years inevitably happen, and we know that how the Mets start the year with the bullpen will by no means be how it looks by the end of the 2025 season's conclusion. But Kirby Yates, again, a veteran at the age of 37 now, like David Robertson, who we're going to talk about a little bit in the show here, again, two grizzled veterans in that Texas Rangers bullpen this past year, putting up tremendous years. Yates put up the best year of his career, posting like just over a 1 year ERA. I mean, his pitches have been absolutely unhittable at times, and even though he has the 1-2 punch, it doesn't matter, because that's all he needs. And Yates is now added to a Dodgers bullpen as if they needed more talent, as if this Dodgers team wasn't already stacked and loaded enough. They already acquired Michael Kopech at the trade deadline last year from the White Sox, who was nails for them entering postseason play, a flamethrower who I know is going to thrive in that pitching lab. Then you bring back Blake Trinan. As long as he's healthy after having a World Series run with them, he's going to be lethal in that pen. They have even starters in Dustin May and others to a degree that they may consider just coming out of the bullpen because they're so nasty and they have zero room for them in their rotation. I mean, Bobby Miller, same applies. You can make the argument with Tony Gonsolin too. There are so many relief options. Let's not forget one of the best southpaws in the game, and Alex Vesia. Bruce Stark Gratterall, when he's healthy, I mean, just, it is disgusting just how much talent the LA Dodgers have, but how much they continue to get away with landing these talents. And when I say getting away, it's not, oh, for the MLB to do anything here. The reality is, and I know this is very hard for us to fans to stomach, but it's true. And this is where I'm not here to condone the Mets not landing certain players, but there's also truth to be said here when saying that the LA Dodgers are without question the most desirable team in Major League Baseball. It isn't shocking that a veteran like Kirby Yates, who isn't getting any younger, entering his age 37-38 season, who's never won a World Championship before, likes the idea of signing with the reigning World Series LA Dodgers, who have without question the best roster on paper entering the 2025 season. That right there is exactly why the Mets never stood a chance among other teams. As soon as the Dodgers showed interest, Kirby Yates was probably a damn lock to go there. Now, it wasn't the case with every guy. Tanner Scott actually had a preference to go to the Chicago Cubs before signing with the LA Dodgers over the past 48 to 72 hours, but the difference maker there was that the Cubs did not want to go beyond 3 years. The Dodgers were willing to go 4. They were willing to continue the deferred payments. The Cubs had more of a stubbornness, and they're willing to spend on a Tanner Scott, who's only been, again, nails as a reliever the past 2 years, and he really has been up and down pretty much up until that point, with this time with the Baltimore Orioles, and in his start up there with the Miami Marlins. But what I'm trying to get at here is that as frustrating as it is to see the Mets not land certain guys, especially someone like Kirby Yates, who I would have loved in this Mets bullpen, there's also something to be said about the context of why these guys are going to where they're going. If this was just a Dodgers team that didn't win it all this past year and didn't have as sexy of a team on paper, then I would be more bothered. But when you add in the obvious factors as to they will be destination point A for any grizzled veteran of a player that's never won a championship before as looking to be at the best destination to help them get there, again, it goes without saying, they are the team to beat on that front. I know the counter right away that a lot of fans have is, okay, Wardy, then how are the Mets expected to get better if everyone that's good is just going to go there? And it's a great question. The reality is that thankfully, this mindset does not go for every player. It goes for plenty of players, and we're seeing that further exposed with these signings that have happened with the Dodgers. Michael Conforto, for example, signing that 1 year, right around, $17+ million deal with the Dodgers, knowing that he is currently their 4th, 5th outfielder, is perfectly fine for him because Michael Conforto loves the idea of being on the LA Dodgers and having a true chance to win. See how that matters? The context, Conforto is actually prioritizing a greater chance to win than being on the best team to give him as many at-bats as possible and to increase his value should he hit the free agent market again. Not that he won't be go with the Dodgers, but it may very well be in such a limited sample size versus say he signed hypothetically with a team like the Colorado Rockies, right? Just to try to inflate his numbers and then be dealt at the trade deadline to a contending team then looking for a bigger bag in the offseason. Then you look at a player that say is looking to be the ace of a rotation, that wants to frontline a rotation, that wants to be there and to really be the go-to guy. That is exactly why certain guys would not go to a team like the LA Dodgers. Plenty of them have. Blake Snell has done it. Tyler Glasnow was traded there. He's very happy about that. And we see them make their continued moves on that front. But the point I'm just trying to make is that the context matters because there are different thought processes behind these teams. And Tony, I would implore you next time that you chime into a show, because it won't be this one because you're now gone forever, is that you would just, maybe have common sense. If you're going to go into an opposing fan's chat, the least you could do is at least be, decent in your comments instead of being as stupid as you were. Again, lesson learned for anyone that's a fan of an opposing team in the chat. We love to have you. If you're a Dodger fan, if you're a Braves fan, if you're a Yankees fan, I don't care who you're a fan of. I love friendly banner, but also just don't be a schmuck and act like you're going to come in and rule the place when, buddy, far from it, you are in the minority here. So now let's reel in and let's continue this conversation, folks, because by a show of hands in the live chat and to my replay viewers in the comments down below, please let us know down there how many of you are beyond frustrated with the circumstances of the Dodgers and not frustrated with what the Mets aren't doing. How many of you are more frustrated by seeing what the Dodgers are able to really sway with things that are out of teams like the Mets' control? Now, again, could the Mets have offered as much money for Tanner Scott? Yes, but does that mean that he was going to come here? No. It's hard to not pick the Dodgers when they were giving that type of offer and when they are the Dodgers having just won the World Championship. So let me know how you guys feel about that. How many of you guys are currently blaming Steve Cohen and David Stearns with how the offseason has went outside of Soto versus the realities of the Dodgers and other teams at the moment? I love to hear it. So annoying, but congrats to them. I'm not even going to give them a congrats. They won it all this past year. They already got my congratulations. Josh with a $2 haul. Thank you so much. Do you think Bregman would sign a 3 or 4 year deal? The thing is, I think he would, Josh, but I don't think it'll be with the Mets. I actually think Alex Bregman is going to be more and more of a Red Sox by the second I think about it. There's been more rumblings out there. And if Bregman is willing to get to that 3-4 year range after the Red Sox have already thrown 3 years at him, including opt-outs potentially, I think that would make a lot of sense for Bregman because it would be a batter's box in Fenway and a solid, solid lineup there in what is a deep AL East to then compete with the Yankees more, which I'm sure Bregman doesn't hate the idea of, to stay highly competitive there, to rekindle relationships with Walker Buehler, among others. I would like Bregman a lot, but I don't think Bregman is a likelihood at this point in time, considering the Mets have been in the dark on that front for quite a bit now. I can't be mad at the Dodgers for making their team the best they can. The rest of the league needs to step up. That's true, and that's where we're going to have, in my opinion, at least there needs to be a salary floor as we ultimately get to the next CBA, because we cannot be having this drasticness from one side to another where you have teams like the Mets this past year and the Dodgers 2 years ago spending over $1 billion in one offseason, come to find out that, okay, then we have teams that don't spend a single dollar, i.e. the Miami Marlins and the Colorado Rockies of years past, for example. Like, that just simply cannot happen. You cannot have it where you have one player contract for one team supersedes like the entire value of a team itself. Like, it's insane how drastic they can be. And as someone who loves Steve Cohen and is willing to suspend, I am by no means complaining on the front of what the Mets have been doing over the past couple of years, but it's more so on just the reality on if we actually want some type of balance in this game where we don't have a true super team now that we have reached a juggernaut. Like now, again, we're looking at, this is like the old Yankees in certain ways with the Dodgers, but I would argue this is even more magnified because of the fact that you have Shohei Ohtani as a key piece in it all, along with everyone else. An ace caliber rotation where no other rotation Major League Baseball has at least 5 ace caliber starters. It isn't there. And when I see ace caliber, it's all with guys that have proven ace ability, either in the major leagues or in Roki Sasaki's case, they're obviously everywhere but the MLB to this point. Kevin Medina, thank you so much for the $5. I appreciate that. Kevin says, where do you stand on the salary cap 4 convo? I prefer salary 4 as opposed to, I agree with you. I think a floor makes endless sense. Every single team should have to spend this amount of money in general, and they should have this amount of dollars. I think that is fair. I think if every team that has to spend a certain amount of hundreds of millions, then there is more balance in the game today. For example, the Las Vegas Athletics are only spending money now because they know they have to, and they actually want to get their damn stadium in Vegas, as they're currently based out of Sacramento, right? So they have a further emphasis that they have to spend. Fisher has always had money, but he's just a piece of shit owner and hasn't done it, and literally ruined what was the franchise and the history of the Oakland A's after what was many mediocre years because they wouldn't spend it all. Now they're showing a willingness to spend, but I guarantee that they have an unofficial floor that they have to spend to get further approval in their process of getting that stadium done, and the money and the funding and everything that you need there to make it happen. Really curious how you guys feel on the front of a floor versus a cap. Again, a cap I can live with, but at the same time, I like how Steve Cohen can separate himself from others too. So I would prefer not a cap, because the same way that the Dodgers can separate themselves is the same way that I need the Mets to, because if there is not going to be a drastic change in the game in the next couple of years, outside of a potential floor, we're going to see this natural divide with teams that are just in complete light years greater position on not only the financial end, but on the talent end on their rosters and having the development. If the Mets want to win a championship at all in the near future, will endure with Soto and the core group that they're building, they have to continue to move on and upward because we have to deal with the Dodgers. Now, with the Dodgers having the sexiest roster on the table, does that mean that they're locked to win all this next year? No, of course it isn't, but just like how we saw this past year with the Dodgers winning it all, now they only got better. Yes, the Mets, I firmly believe, will be a better team for 2025 when this offseason is said and done. I think they already are already. And I will continue to make that argument. Juan Soto is leaps and bounds twice the player, if not triple the player that Pete Alonso is in production and the true value that you're getting and everything else in between. But I also know that the Mets are a Pete Alonso bat short from really being where they want to be heading into 2025 on the offensive end. And on the pitching end, we know that there's more shoring up that they would like to do there, especially in the bullpen front. Would I like them to add more of the rotation? Yes, and we'll touch on that briefly and be on the lookout, because we will have future content touching on that more, which I'm excited to get out for each and every one of you, just to rehash on certain topics and things that we haven't talked about in a bit, is to see if that is a potential fit, if these routes make sense, and exactly why they would. So be on the lookout for that in the near future on the platform. But guys, let's talk a bit here on the latest with Alonso, because we have seen just from earlier today that the Blue Jays have expressed interest in Alonso and Jurickson Profar per Mark Feinsand. But one, that doesn't at all concern me. If I'm being completely honest with you, I think Jurickson Profar makes a lot more sense to potentially land in Toronto than Alonso would. And the simple reason for that is, unless the Toronto Blue Jays make it abundantly clear that they're going to pretty much fully commit to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at third base in his walk year, that DH position is more stuck with Anthony Santander than anyone else for the vast majority of the 2025 season. Now, can you make it work if you are the Toronto Blue Jays because you just want to put out the best offensive team possible for 2025? Yes, there is a way to make it work, and that would be by doing the following. Either A, having Alonso at first, Vladdy every day at third base, and Santander at DH. B, Santander being more in the corner outfields, even though that he'll be a liability there, when Alonso more at DH and Vladdy at first. C, you can have Vladdy and Alonso alternate from the first base DH positions, and potentially giving Vladdy some reps at third base, which he would like heading into the season. He said himself, actually, he's not opposed to it, quite the opposite, as it could help increase his market value should he show his versatility and actually be competent there at the hot corner. So it's not impossible, but I would say the likelihood is far less after landing Anthony Santander. So yeah, the Blue Jays can continue to have as much interest as they want, but the same way with what Andy Martino reported over a week ago, even with the Mets pivoting the way that they essentially have and Pete Alonso, who in their right mind really thinks that Pete Alonso is going to be in another uniform this upcoming season? Truthfully, if you guys feel that way, I would love to know why you feel that way. Outside of what we've heard at this point, seriously, the Mets are in need of an Alonso type player. Not that they can't win without him, because I do think they absolutely can, but they're missing a piece, and the piece that they're missing is him. Color me shocked. Alonso's market now, as we reach towards the end of January, is slim to none. So, if the market is going to continue to be the way that is, where more and more suitors come off the board, it's almost like a reunion is the most logical reason to rekindle things, right? A reunion feels most logical to happen, I should say. And I'm really not wavering from that. You couldn't live with your own failure. Where does that bring you back to me? Exactly, Scott H. Exactly. That's a good way to put it. 51% saying he stays. I think we're at, I think that's fair, Truman. At 51%, I think we're beyond 51%. I'm so confident that Pete Alonso's still going to be met on opening day that I'm throwing it out there. I'm going 55% that Pete Alonso will be a Met on opening day. I feel good about it. I do. It's really hard to view it as anything else. And recap, Jack, we have talked about Billy Wagner finally being inducted in the Hall of Fame and what it means there for the Mets and, other players there. Talked about the LA Dodgers signing Kirby Yates and that immediate impact it has on Major League Baseball, including the Mets, and how they have a continued uphill battle to climb. And I will say, just going back on a second of Kirby Yates, folks, because we're going to talk about Alonso, then we're going to get into Mr. David Robertson and more topics from there, a little bit potentially on pitching options as well, starter-wise. But I did just want to make a note on Yates, is that as talented and as very good as he is, and as good of a pickup as it is for the Dodgers, that was also an anomaly of a season that Kirby Yates has had. And there is a great possibility that Kirby Yates could either A, have an injury-riddled year in 2025, not that I wish it, but again, health has not been on his side consistently the past number of years, and he isn't getting any younger. And when you look at his usage with the Dodgers, it may fluctuate where he may not thrive in as many roles as we initially think. So this is not me to wish anything bad on Kirby Yates. I'm just saying that when it comes to relievers, they're very fickle. It's very easy for me to not lose sleep over Kirby Yates and Tanner Scott being the Dodgers bullpen, as it is a lot more difficult with me losing sleep knowing that Roki Sasaki, Tyler Glasnow, and guys like Blake Snell are part of that rotation and have been, in the case of Glasnow. That concerns me more. Relievers are far more replaceable, and we will continue to see that throughout the course of the 2025 year for the Mets. Yes, you want more sexy options, and that's what we will talk about, the potential reunion of David Robertson, if there's been anything new on that front or lack thereof, and ultimately why it would make a lot of sense for the Mets to bring him in. I'll with some other reliever names out there in a second. We got Larry in the chat I say 80% he comes back. Interesting. And guys, to our roughly 900 people in the live chat, can you guys please smash a like and subscribe button for your boy? It's greatly appreciated. Help us get to our short-term goal here in the live show, and to our replay viewers of right around 450 plus likes. That just means half you guys in the live show right now need to hit those buttons. And to all our new subscribers, happy to have you in here, folks. We are giving away a Mets jersey, a shirt jersey of whatever player that you want to one lucky winner in a live stream a week from now on the platform, all for now hitting 31,000 subscribers. So thank you guys again for that and for the endless support. And my replay viewers in the comments down below, continue to let us know your thoughts on the latest, not only with Yates, Robertson, but also on the Alonso front. Because as we get back to the Alonso front here for a minute, everybody, that I like to highlight, the market is not only beyond shrunk, but we have reached a point in the offseason where it's been made abundantly clear on what every negotiation tactic has been. And Jack, thank you for the sub, brother. I appreciate that. Left and right, you see on that how the Mets and David Stearns and Steve Cohen are standing firm that regardless of Pete Alonso, Scott Boras throwing 6 and 5 and 4, and now 3 years an exclusive offer with an opt-out at $90+ million, that the Mets are so stubborn here on right around this $20 million gap or so, tells you all you need to know, right? They will continue to say, hey, Pete, go and test that damn market, baby. If you find what you're looking for, congratulations and good luck with your future endeavors, wherever that may be. And the problem that I have with that, the one problem that I have with that is because, one, I love how Stearns has went about this offseason for the most part. I'm not complaining at all on that front. But what I will say, and what is something to make note of, is that the Dodgers are only getting better. The Braves haven't done anything yet, but we know they're going to. We know the Braves are going to pounce, whether it's in the trade market or in the free agent market like we're currently seeing with guys that we haven't talked about as much at this point. We know that the potential is still all there for more teams that are rivals of the Mets that'll be thorns in their side throughout the course of 2025 getting better. And for the Dodgers having just won the World Series, to land Roki Sasaki, to land Tanner Scott, to land Kirby Yates, to land Teoscar Hernandez bringing him back, to land Michael Conforto there as a depth outfield DH piece, and to land everyone else that they have landed this offseason, that tells you that the Mets need to up the ante here. I'm not saying that they got to go absolutely balls to the wall, scorched earth where we have all these terrible contracts, but you also need to be cognizant of what the teams that are better than you right now are actively doing. And it's hard to envision a world at this point in time, or a team like the Mets especially, are going to have a better 2025 regular season, at least, with the on-field product that they have in comparison to the Dodgers. And I don't expect them to get to a point with their roster where they will have as good of a team. That's pretty much impossible for every team across the game when comparing with the Dodgers. But it's about momentum. Can the Mets ride the momentum like they did in 2024 and 2025 again? I absolutely think they can. I think that Juan Soto will certainly help them reach greater highs and even maybe the NLCS approach that we had this past year. But you still need to have more, okay? And the Dodgers, the fact that they are so locked and loaded and so thirsty for a back-to-back championship year is exactly why David Stearns and Steve Cohen cannot be complacent, where if Pete Alonso does in fact go elsewhere and you are continuing to pivot, you cannot allow just Jerks and Profar and a mid to low level reliever pickup be your end-all be-all. I find that as a frustrating problem. I don't hate the idea of Profar, but if he goes back to, say, having a down year in 2025, like he has been Jekyll and Hyde every freaking year, he's either very good or not to this point. There's been no consistency. If that happens again and he just isn't a figure for some reason, then we have a greater problem, because not only did you miss on potentially trying to replace the Alonso value with not only home runs, but just offensive production, but now you're in the negative, where even as good as a Juan Soto is, you're moving more laterally than you are moving upward, right? If you are moving upward, it's not as much as you should be, where you look at the Dodgers and you know that they're only getting better. So when we look at what the Mets need to do this offseason, I think it goes without saying, you still need to do everything to try to bring back Pete Alonso. Not so much maybe on saying, okay, we will meet your absolute needs, but more so on just coming together. We know we're not far here. We're like $15 to $20 million off between Scott Boras and Alonso and Mets camp. Just get the effing job done. It's just such a stupid staring contest at this point. And the case of everything else and adding another bat, I'm in favor of adding Profar. I would love Alonso and Profar. Maybe I'm sounding too greedy, but I know the Mets have a lot of money that's off the books. They have a lot of money that they can still work with right now, and there's really no reason for them not to go out of their way to do this unless they firmly believe that they're going to have not only a better than expectation start to the year, but ultimately their confidence in how they can execute by the trade deadline, which I will commend them for. The Jesse Winker pickup was tremendous, right? The pitching moves were more lackadaisical, were more underwhelming in retrospect when we looked at last year's deadline. And the Mets can make bigger splashes. I'm not opposed to them, but you obviously would like to have your roster as in shape as possible for competing with the top dogs consistently to begin the year versus having it full on bank on things to happen by time that we reach the trade deadline. Again, I have been very happy with the majority of what the Mets have done this offseason, but after seeing what these continued teams do, and the Dodgers among others, you just have to make sure you don't sit on your hands. And I don't think the Mets will be doing that. This is more so on just how the markets are played right now, and the fact that we still have Alonso, Bregman, and a lot of these other key names out there is very telling on how slow-moving things have been for Scott Boras clients and how fast-moving things have been for other mid-level options across Major League Baseball. Kevin, thank you so much for the donation. Kevin Klein with the $5 haul says, I don't think Pete makes a difference for the Dodgers. If anything, Pete will back up an old... No, Alonso wasn't going to the Dodgers. Unless Alonso just wants to go to the Dodgers to be their standalone DH, and they're going to give that to him, and then just be there, rake, and then hit the free agent market, that'd be the only way I see the Dodgers gain Alonso. And if Alonso does go to the Dodgers, then is there even really a point in watching this season? You know, I say that half jokingly, but push comes to shove at some point. Something needs to fucking happen. Pardon my friend. See the profanity's kicking. That's how you know Wardy's getting frustrated when you get an all-star, you know, at every position. You know, just like a star at every position. And the frustrating thing is that, like, this is more so in just giving credit where credit's due. The Dodgers built this over a decade span. This is stuff that the Mets can't compete with to a degree because it's not their fault that they didn't have Steve Cohen as an owner yet, right? That was the Wilpons doing. Steve tried to buy the Mets a year prior, but the Wilpons were stubborn on the price, so he said no. He balked, and he came back a year later. So because of that is exactly why I, don't fault Steve Cohen at all for a lot of these things. It's more so on just the realities of what the Dodgers have consistently built for the past decade plus, whereas the Mets just have more uphill climbing they have to do, not only on in-house talent, development, but also on just being an attractive destination consistently. Thank you for that donation earlier, Kevin. I appreciate you. Exactly, D-Mac. They're bringing out the worst to me. You hate to see it. Brennan with the $5 haul. Thank you so much for that, Brennan. Brennan says, pick a Soto. Pat and Penning is my great Pete is ours. Want my polar bear back. Brennan, I love it. Thank you so much. And yeah, I want Alonso back too. Most fans want to. I mean, not every fan wants Alonso back. There are fans that like screw him. But the counter is like, don't you want your team to be better than how it currently looks for 2025? Pete Alonso makes your team better than what it currently is right now. There's not one person that can deny that. Unless the Mets roll Mark Vientos at first base and he gives us 35 to 40 home runs, and Brett Beatty blossoms at the hot corner as not only a true third base option defensively, but one that can at least be around league average, if not above league average offensively. That's a lot of betting on Mark Vientos to not only have a tremendous year again, when he had some really luck on his side that you can argue in 2024. He was a great hitter, tremendous talent, but there are some things I'm curious to see. Will he be able to showcase his consistency with in 2025 in a larger sample size and a full 162? And then Brett Beatty, again, I'm all for giving Beatty an opportunity, but it's hard to want to commit to that right now when you're in a win now stage. You know what I mean? It's like, it's the balance of like, I still see the potential in Beatty, whereas I also want nothing to do with Brett Beatty being given an opportunity to be our everyday third baseman. It's a tough balance. It's the angel and the devil on the shoulder right now, talking to me left and right. And one's trying to be the complacent fan that wants to be content with things if things don't go in my favor, and the other wants to be the more outspoken fan on if things don't go in our favor, that shouldn't be the case. And I will need to see it to believe in the case of things being the right decision for Beatty, Beatty, Luis Angel Cunha, among others there toying in the hot corner. Luis Angel less, Beatty more, obviously. Beatty's cook says, yeah, I don't think it's tough. I don't think he's cut. Like, the defense, what pisses me off too, and I don't know who it was. I saw on Mets Twitter earlier today, it was trending on Brett Beatty on like, should the Mets commit to him at third base? And it was a video of him with a throwing error. I'm like, you really have to be thick-headed and nitpick a Brett Beatty throwing error in 2024. Because if you actually paid attention and watched the Mets last year, Brett Beatty's defense was far from the effing concern, right? Brett Beatty's offense was the problem. He was star-studded with the power in the early goings of 2024 in the first number of weeks when things weren't going well for the rest of the team. And then as things got better for the rest of the team, things were declining for Beatty. His defense was league profession more often than not. He made major strides defensively last year, but it was the offense that nipped him in the butt because he continues to struggle to lift the ball consistently, which was once again his demise as Mark Vientos got the call, and the rest is history. Mauricio needs to get reps at AAA first. Ball Cap, and I love you, Jim. Happy to have you in here. Guys, subscribe to Ball Cap Sports if you guys haven't already for baseball content, tremendous content each and every day there. Jim, great guy, a great friend on the platform here. But Jim, Mauricio hasn't had any baseball activities until like the past month or two. He will be starting the year in AAA, absolutely. And he will be a guy that the Mets can consider a little bit later into the season for sure. Yes, Randy, but you know how many years the Dodgers didn't have that? And this took a decade plus of them building to finally win one. We're now entering year 5 with Steve Cohen. So we're on a good pace considering that we just fell short to the Dodgers in the NLCS last year in the first year of David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza. I mean, when you look at that 2024 Mets run, it just is still really hard to fathom just how incredible it was and from the start to finish. What do I think of Iglesias? I definitely think the Mets will be bringing Iglesias back. I think that's almost a foregone conclusion. That's a guy that'll be surprise lands elsewhere unless the Mets really want to commit with other in-house options to toy with utility fits. But it's like Iglesias was such a rally for this team. I think Jose Iglesias was as important to this Mets team and on the clubhouse and on the field up there with Francisco Lindor and others. That's how important he was. Who do you think will produce the higher OPS at DH? Santander or Winker Marte platoon? Oh, that's a good question. But simple answer, if it's OPS, I'm going with Anthony Santander. Just because we have no clue how much Winker and Marte may fluctuate. I mean, Marte's power especially fluctuates significantly, and I think there's still a world where Marte's traded before the year starts. If that happens, that's because of guys like Jerks and Profar that the Mets would say commit to. And actually, guys, let's pivot. Let's talk now on Jerks and Profar for a bit longer, and then from Profar, we'll get into David Robertson a bit more, and then from David Robertson, we'll touch a bit on rotation, and then I'll answer some of your comments, questions, and concerns before we wrap up our live show tonight. Again, guys, if you haven't already, smash a like and subscribe on your way in. Thank you guys so much for the endless support here in our latest Mets news and rumors segment here, and we will have more content out for each and every one of you tomorrow. Be on the lookout for a new video and our live stream, and the same follows in the coming days here on WardyNYM. But as we now pivot, folks, from talking about the polar bear, now let's talk about Profar. Jurickson Profar is the name. And Jurickson Profar, yeah, I know that name probably gives you nightmares when you think of the 2022 wild card against the San Diego Padres. But Jurickson Profar in 2024 now, after having an abysmal one and only year in Colorado in 2023, proved his worth yet again, this time to a greater magnitude than ever in his age 31 season. And Jurickson Profar, mind you, is a switch hitter. He is not just batting from the right side, so please ignore that little typo of an error in the graphic down below where you look at the stats for the regular season and his career. That was a hiccup on my front, and I sincerely apologize for that. But Profar, what a career year, guys. 24 home runs, 85 plus RBIs, 10 stolen bags, a 280 average, a 380 OBP, a 459 slug, a 4.3 WAR, a 139 WRC plus, basically 40% better than the average batter in baseball. Why do I like Jurickson Profar? I like Jurickson Profar if you bring Pete Alonso back and you add Profar as an upgraded option from Starling Marte. That's why I like Jurickson Profar a lot, because then you could have Profar more in that DH position, platooning with Jesse Winker, but also a guy that can give you corner outfield reps without a problem for days that maybe you want Nimmo there at DH, or you give Nimmo an off day because maybe his foot is acting up. Maybe the Mets really aren't getting good production from Jose Siri and Tyrone Taylor, so they have to give some reps to a Brandon Nimmo if he feels healthier at somewhat and get some center field reps. Not that I really want him there. I'm just saying if they prioritize bat first mentality than anything else, that would make more sense then. Just don't see it happening too much. Profar and Alonso I would love naturally, but if the Mets are going to allow Alonso to walk, Profar is not a terrible option as long as we can get more of the Profar that we got this past year. But the reality is that if you're signing Jurickson Profar, it's hard to envision him being in a role right away where he would be consistently playing every day unless he was in that first base position. And that's where we come to an interesting conversation. Jurickson Profar has gotten first base reps the past number of years with the San Diego Padres. Not a lot, but when he has played first base, he hasn't really had any issues at the position. He's been perfectly fine there. Now, is Jurickson Profar a sexy name at first base? No, but if you look at the tremendous year he's had and his ability consistently, again, Jurickson Profar, one thing that I definitely noticed about him that I liked a lot, and Jeffrey, I'm happy to hear you ordered one of those Soto jerseys because they're absolutely chef's kiss, just disgustingly good. If you look at Profar's numbers this past season through Baseball Savant here, guys, they're an absolute thing of beauty. But what stands out a lot about Profar is where we get to really the squared up percentage down. Consistently throughout Jurickson Profar's career with the Padres especially, he has had a really, really good eye at the plate. And this is more of the same. Profar has been in the 70th to 90th percentile in these final 4 or 5 statistics pretty steadily throughout the past number of years in his career. So that's where I stand out of, okay, he's had a very sharp eye at the plate. He has just not been as good in his quality of contact and also just getting that average up as much as you'd like. Career 280 average season for him when he's sitting right around 240, 245, where the OBP was up by, 40, 50 points this past year. You look at that great lineup there with the San Diego Padres. Could he be able to gel with a Mets team there as a potential first base fit while keeping Mark Vientos at the hot corner? It's definitely possible. It's a unique option for a guy that is versatile, that can play in various defensive positions. But the one thing that I don't love about Jurickson Profar is that not only is he a guy that has not had consecutive years being this good of a hitter, but he has also not been a guy that has played any outfield position all that great. So you get versatility when you look at someone like him, but you don't get a lot of proficient when you look at the defensive upside. More lack thereof unless you look at his very small sample size at first base over the past couple years. But Jurickson Profar, definitely a potential fit for this Mets team. For the Toronto Blue Jays, I mean, you can almost make an argument that maybe a fit like this would make more sense to them if they want to put Profar more in the outfield and Santander there more at DH, depending on what their configuration would be, as they're interested in both. And there's also a possibility that the Blue Jays don't land either, that Santander may be far and away their biggest splash this offseason still. But in the case of Profar, in the case of Alonso, if the Mets have to get one or the other, goes without saying, obviously, I want Pete Alonso. And Jim, thank you so much again for chiming in, brother. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your evening. What an absolute beauty he is. But on the topic of if I want one or the other, it's obviously I want Alonso first. But am I going to be upset if the Mets land Profar? No. I think I'm just still going to be, to an extent, underwhelmed if we head into the year where Profar would be the second biggest bat fit that we had along with Soto. I think that there's just still too much of an uncertainty as to how he performs on a year-by-year basis, but there are at least the following things favoring the Mets in a Profar pursuit, and they are as follows. One, he would be in a deep lineup, so Profar would be in a lineup that would be far more appealing, like what it's been with the Padres, and not as doom and gloom as it was in Colorado. Not shocking that he was bad with the Rockies when you consider he was in, let's be blunt here, a dog shit Colorado Rockies lineup. Their bats haven't even been consistently good the past couple years, so you can't say it's all about the Rockies, taking advantage of the ballpark. No, a lot of their offensive bats haven't even done that in recent years. But then you also get into, okay, he just had a breakout year at the age of 31. This could be a continuation of Profar having the next 2-3 years at a proficient level of similar production. That is possible, and if Profar is in a limited role where he's not necessarily playing every single day, if, say, the Mets brought in Alonso and also brought in Profar and traded Marte, I would love that then, because not only would you have the best guys available in those positions, but this lineup would be as deep as humanly possible for the 2025 year when you consider their free agent options, their trade options, which are far less likely to happen. Would I like Alonso more? Yes. But am I going to be crying if we land Profar? No. Will I be disappointed if Profar is the only offensive move and the final offensive move of the offseason? Yes, to a degree, I will be, and I will reiterate that here on the platform. Not like it's the end of the world, but, there's just something to be said about just wanting to try and up the ante a bit here when we look at our competition and the Dodgers and the Braves being healthy again and the Phillies, even though I love our chances against them, so on and so forth. Kevin Weiss, thank you so much for the $5 holla. Kevin Weiss says, except for the first half, expect the first half McNeil, he has been hitting a machine. Why has everyone written him off? It's not, okay, Kevin, let's backtrack. One, Jeff McNeil did not just have a horrendous first half in 2024. It was a continuation of what was a very frustrating, pretty much year and a half of mediocre baseball for Jeff McNeil. That's supposed to be a 300 hitter and it's supposed to be a batting champ type player for this Mets team. And as the game has deviated farther and farther away from relying on contact hitters that have low power, just high contact ability, which is why a guy like Luis Arraez is in a lot of trade talks, even though he's a consistent batting title champ, because that only get you so far as a plate setter. And the problem is, Jeff McNeil's abilities are best as a plate setter and also as a above league average second baseman and corner outfielder. When he's right, he's also been below league average in those positions too at times. But when McNeil's hot, he's hot. In the second half of 2024, he was with a 900 OPS. He was a very good hitter, more close to that 300 range, exactly where you want him to be. But there's still something about McNeil and with the configuration of this team that feels off. The Mets don't need more outfield help, which it never hurts to have depth, but with the assumption that they do land potentially one other guy, if they do bring in Profar, especially, then they will have another fit there. You have Drew Gilbert waiting in the wings there to see when he'll make his impact in 2025, if at all. The Mets have endless second base options to choose from of in-house options, along with potentially bringing back Jose Iglesias, in which he was perfectly fine when getting starter reps for this Mets team, as that was a guy that, even though that he wasn't known for as much power, still gave the Mets like a 450 OPS slugging rather, which was very high from his career norm. So he was really productive, not only contact hitter, but at times a gap to gap and at little slivers of home run hitting for Jose Iglesias too for this Mets team. Jeff McNeil, I don't hate him being on the Mets for 2025, but the reason why there's pessimism with him is that he isn't getting any younger. He's less desirable for what this Mets team needs now. And if you look at his past 2 years, he's only had half of a season over the past 2 years where he's really played to the level that the Mets have wanted him to play for. He was pretty much down for good chunks of 2023 that we saw there. And as we got into 2024, especially, that first half was absolutely brutal. Some of the worst pace we've ever seen him play to this point. So that's what I have to say on the McNeil front. No ill will with Jeff, obviously. There's been a lot that's went on over the years with, clubhouse stuff out of the clubhouse, what have you. But Jeff's a good guy. As someone who's met him personally, has been a part of his charity event in years past, I could tell you that I wish nothing but the best for him and his entire family. But McNeil's future with the Mets, I do think, is absolutely uncertain to a degree still. Drew Smith coming back, I don't see the Mets bringing Drew Smith back, nor do they need to. We need to get over these biases just because the guys have been in the org for a little bit. It's okay if he lands elsewhere. But now, guys, we talk about Jerks and Profar. Let's talk about, in my opinion, one of the best names to talk about. And that's going to be Mr. David Robertson. Because we've highlighted D-Rob previously on the platform, but we have to talk about what has changed slightly, if anything has changed on the David Robertson front. And to an extent, there has, because per multiple reports and also through people that I have heard throughout the industry, yes, folks, for one of the first times in a hot minute this offseason, I can do the hashtag Wardy sources for you. I have heard just reaffirmed thoughts through people in the industry that after the Mets landing AJ Minter, they're still involved in the bullpen market. So that's a plus. Secondly, it is true that they're still shopping in the higher end aisle because the Mets were in it for Tanner Scott, which means when you look at David Robertson and when you look at some of the other key names available in the free agent market, D-Rob really sticks out like a sore thumb right now. He is the sexiest option now. It was him and Yates. Like, he is clearly like the big one, the big behemoth. But the Mets have had no lack of interest in Robertson. I can't see that they've had a heavy reported amount because they just haven't heard a lot there. But I have heard that they're still shopping in the big game hunting front of the reliever market. So whether that's Robertson, because when you look at the reliever market, there really aren't many other, big names out there, and Robertson fits the bill in the shorter term end especially. I can certainly see a reunion there being a potential for this Mets team. So again, is it a slam dunk to happen? No, absolutely not. But could the Mets bring David Robertson back? Yes. And as we go back to Mike Puma's reports through the New York Post over the past number of weeks, stating how the Mets have been shopping in that higher echelon, and not only guys like David Robertson are a fit, Tommy Kahnle as well, former New York Yankee as well, a strong year with them. Kahnle is a timeless wonder. Ages like a fine wine. He just needs to stay healthy. But what David Robertson did this past year was nothing short of not only impressive, but a guy that I absolutely need to see back in this Mets bullpen. And I'm going to keep preaching this to the choir until he either lands elsewhere or he lands here with the Mets. Because David Robertson, guys, 2 years ago, and I've said it plenty, I'll reiterate for people that don't remember, was in this Mets bullpen. He signed a one-year deal with us. And when the Mets signed David Robertson, I was so excited because I was coming off of a year where I wanted the Mets to trade for him when he was on the Chicago Cubs, posted like a sub-1 ERA, right around a 1 ERA up until the deadline. They got traded to the Philadelphia Phillies for a very good prospect, that being Ben Brown, if I'm not mistaken, the pitching prospect who impacted the Cubs the past year and a half or so. And Robertson was solid for the Phillies down the stretch leading into the World Series run that year, and even pitched well against my Mets. And I saw the Phillies beat the Mets in extra innings where Robertson being nails in the 9th inning at Citi Field crushed me. I always wanted David Robertson, though. I'm like, he's a longtime Yank. He knows what it takes to win in New York. He's an Alabama boy as well, so for him to handle the media as well as he has is telling that he's locked in, and regardless of where he's originally from as a player. And David Robertson lands with the Mets, and Buck Showalter ran Mets in 2023. And because of Edwin Diaz going down, sadly, that we saw there with his injury, that is exactly why David was never able to be that setup man the way he was supposed to be for the Mets in 2023 rather. He was a very formidable closer option for them, was a fantastic replacement for Edwin Diaz. All things considered, the Mets just did not have enough depth in their pen, nor did they have enough quality on their offense in 2023 for things to really not be in complete turmoil from the start that year, sadly. But David Robertson was one of the few bright spots leading up until the Mets traded him that year, when he only posted like just over a 2 ERA with the Mets, like a 2 to 2.5 ERA or so, with the Mets leading up to him being dealt to the Miami Marlins around the deadline. And then he had an inflated ERA from thereafter. Wasn't as good with Miami down the stretch as they had that little wild card postseason run. Remember that? Yeah. Remember when the Marlins were in playoffs? Yeah, me neither. Robertson goes on to have a tremendous 2024 with the Texas Rangers. You guys see down below a 3 flat ERA. The fact that his velocity still sits, between 93 to 95 at basically the age of 40 is insane. Robertson's cutter is still disgusting. The changeup is chef's kiss. He's attacking lefties just as good as righties still, which means that if you land Robertson, he is a lefty specialist just as much as he is a righty specialist. So not only did you land a lefty specialist and AJ Minter who gets righties and lefties out at a quality rate, but you would land a David Robertson who gets them both out at a very good rate. Splits as chef's kiss as one could hope for. This is a guy who has won it all in New York, who knows what it takes to win, who also would have rekindled relationships not only in the Mets organization from 2 years ago, but would finally get to be put in the proper position that he was supposed to be in for the Mets 2 years ago, which would be that setup role. The fact that the Mets are still shopping in the not only bullpen front, but in the upper echelon aisle from everything that I heard is exciting. I have heard that the Mets are still potentially involved in the market of Tim Hill. That may be a lesser lefty option that they can consider in their pen, which I'm absolutely in favor of, because Tim Hill was nails for the New York Yankees this past year after being acquired there in roughly 40 games we saw there with a 2 ERA and then a 1 ERA across 10 outings in the postseason leading up to the World Series, and also worked greatly with Desi Driscoll, who is now the Mets assistant pitching coach, was in said same position with the Yankees this past year. So the Mets are definitely shopping there. They're definitely interested in these markets, and as you guys compare, not only looking at it, just these absolute gorgeous highlights here of David Robertson from this past season, but also taking a look at this beautiful baseball savant, Mr. David Robertson this past year. It tells you all you need to know, guys. I want D-Rob back. I think a lot of us want David Robertson back. And by a show of hands in the chat, everybody, do you think David Robertson coming back is actually not a slam dunk, but do you think it's a possibility? Because I don't only think and know it's a possibility. I'm getting to the point that I don't want to get confident in it happening, but I'm feeling good about the odds of this happening for the Mets. I think that they will go. I think that this is a guy that they will go here for, especially after seeing Yates land with the Dodgers. You shouldn't be making moves consistently because of how other teams make moves, but it's also impossible to ignore the reigning World Series champs making their bullpen even better and then not doing things of similar significance. I think that would be a foolish thing for the Mets to not consider. Thankfully, they are considering these moves. You got the 97th percentile in fastball run value, 86th rather, in pitcher run value, 6th in breaking run value, which is crazy to see, but it makes sense when you look at his pitch mix for the most part there, with the cutter, the curves, the slide piece, the change, and the sinker. The off-speed run value in the 73rd percentile, 84th in expected ERA, 84th in expected batting average, not qualified in fastball velocity, but he was right around there in the 65th percentile at right 95th. Again, sitting 95 still at basically 40 years of age. It is just insane how good he is. 53rd percentile in average exit velocity, 15th in chase percentage, but that doesn't matter because he was absolutely nails. 79th in whip percentage, 96th in K percentage for David Robertson. 29th in walk percentage because the walk rate was a little high we saw this past year. Actually, that's bullshit. A 3.4 walks per 9 is not at all bad when you have a 12.4 K per 9. Ridiculous K to walk ratio. That's like a 9 K to walk ratio. That's amazing. Barrel percentage, 85th percentile, 58th percentile in hard hit percentage. Ground ball percentage, 75th percentile. And right around 80th percentile in his extension, guys. Need I say more? David Robertson is exactly what this Mets bullpen is missing right now. Because when you look at the depth of this Mets bullpen, the Mets have their pieces. Okay, you got Edwin Diaz. Then you think of setup options right away. AJ Minter, Danil Nunez, Jose Budo. Right there, the Mets have 3 solid. Again, AJ Minter could be more of that setup guy than not, but AJ's also being more relied as that go-to lefty option as well, which is why either a blossoming Genesis Cabrera, who's trying to break the bullpen out of camp coming from the Blue Jays this past year, or signing a guy like Tim Hill that we'll defer to in a second, are guys that do make sense for this bullpen for sure. Now you add in the other guys, in this bullpen. I'm trying to think of everyone right now in this pen because the Mets haven't done anything too drastic on the pen front this offseason outside of AJ Minter. I'm actually going to pull up their the fan graphs right now just because I'm losing my train of thought. Mets bullpen fan graphs. Because I know we have a lot of guys too, not a lot, but some of the minor leagues are also going to blossom this year that we're not talking about too much. Okay, so as of right now, per Fangraphs, the Mets' official bullpen is Edwin Diaz, AJ Minter, Jose Budo, Reed Garrett, Danny Yon, and I'm sorry, Danny, but we got to get Danny out of there. That's why we need a Genesis Cabrera or a Tim Hill as an upgrade on that front. Sean Reed Foley, definitely need an upgrade there. Griffin Canning, which I'm perfectly fine with. I think it makes sense that the Mets will have at least one starter type type in their bullpen, whether that's Griffin Canning, whether that's Tyler McGill, or whether that is Paul Blackburn. One of those three, I think, makes a lot of sense to be coming out of their bullpen. From there, it's going to be interesting to see who else that they could find themselves having in that mix. Again, we have the depth chart. There are plenty of relievers, especially when I think of who's a big one. I mean, not only did El Nunez to come back from injury, but there's a couple that are really, like Tyler Zuber, for example, the Mets acquired from the Tampa Bay Rays. He's been working with Driveline, working the pitching lab really well. And he's a guy that went from being in the league to out of the league for a couple years to being an indie ball to playing there with what we saw, the Long Island Ducks, and then signing with the Tampa Bay Rays, being productive for them. Then the Mets picked him up at the deadline, a smaller move, but a guy that can throw absolute gas, too, that the Mets will consider. The Mets have a bunch of guys that they actually picked up this offseason that can throw gas for them. Genesis Cabrera also is a lefty option that can sit, again, giving them mid to high 90s on the velo, which is great. That's what you want to see from a lefty option too. So it's more so on the quality. They don't have enough, not necessarily enough, but they don't have too many high echelon names of guys that have had consistent reliability. Whereas Jose Budo and Danilo Nunez, we're still banking on guys that are coming off of career years in ways. And will they be able to build off of that in 2024? I'd imagine that they can, but will they is an entirely different conversation. Reed Garrett, same applies. One, Reed's health, and two, him breaking out at, age 30, 31 now. Can he consistently continue to do this for the Mets? Matt Gage is no longer in the organization. Rebecca, I believe he signed with the Detroit Tigers already this offseason or somewhere else. Bryce Montes de Oca, sadly, was absolutely cooked in his early rehabilitation process that we saw. I have no positive update on Bryce Montes de Oca, sadly. His injury is so significant that his professional career actually already might be short-lived, depending on how he ramps back, because of how bad his mechanics were and how bad the shoulder injuries that he was already finding himself having, along with TJ. So we'll see on Montes de Oca. I'm wishing him the absolute best. And I would love Ryan Stanek, everybody. I'm not opposed to a Ryan Stanek reunion. I think the Mets are going to land at least one more reliever. That's a Ryan Stanek type player. I'm not opposed to that at all. Who's going to complain if we get Ryan Stanek back? I'm not going to be. But I will say that if the Mets do bring Stanek back, I still would like another arm. I selfishly say that, right? But Ryan Stanek, listen, the numbers aren't pretty when you look at the baseline ERA, but expected ERA of 3.46, what he control, a lot more impressive there, along with Ryan Stanek in the playoffs for the Mets was nails, right? And Stanek entered this 2024 season with both the, who did we get him from? Did we get him from the Tampa Bay Rays? No, that was Phil Maton. Seattle Mariners, right? He was getting cooked with the Mariners. Mets got him. He was not good with us first 2 weeks. Actually got rocked in Seattle against the Mariners too. And then he really started turning things on. Nasty velocity, love that there. I love the arsenal that he's got. Love the moxie on the mound. But Ryan Stanek entering the 2024 year has right around a 2-year ERA and over 20 playoff innings with the Houston Astros and other teams. So I knew that when it came to stepping up in big moments, Stanek had proven that, just like Phil Maton. Unfortunately, Phil Maton forgot those playoff heroics in this past year's run, which is probably why he will not be a Mets reliever again, at least for 2025. But in the case of Stanek, I think that reunion is definitely still a potential. I think there's a role where the Mets can land Stanek a while from now and, have him, shortly before spring training, have another key piece of this bullpen added. Like, that is not something that I think needs to be rushed, because the Mets also were negotiating a trade with the Kansas City Royals for not only a guy that kind of looks like Ryan Stanek, but is a Ryan Stanek profile and a high velo throwing righty that, struggles with his consistency a bit, and that's Hunter Harvey. A little bit younger, a little bit more controllable. The Mets offered Starling Marte, including eating a good chunk of his contract. Royals said no, and I don't know how far gone those negotiations. That goes back to winter meetings. But the Mets are still considering shopping Marte. If they land someone like Jerkson Profar, it likely makes him even more expendable. And you guys are talking about Jack Flaherty. I'm not going to beat a dead horse with Jack Flaherty tonight, but I definitely will mention him briefly right now, and then I'm going to actually get into a little bit more on Hill. Don't be shocked if we talk about Flaherty more here on the platform in the future. When we talk about the remaining starters out there, it's fascinating to see what markets that they reach. Wardy, Mets signed Matt Gage in November. That's incorrect, Rebecca. Hold on. Yeah, no, I'm not going crazy. I love you, Rebecca, but you're making me go crazy here. Literally a month ago, December 21st, 2024, here we have Detroit Free Press reporting Detroit Tigers sign lefty reliever Matt Gage to a minor league contract. Matt Gage was acquired by the Mets during the regular season of 2024, but he never got an outing with the Mets. He was a lefty option that they were considering along with Danny and Alex Young. Gage was really good in the minor leagues, and they acquired him off waivers from the Dodgers organization last year, but he never sniffed a day at the major leagues, and that was pretty much that. We need a quality setup. I agree. And David Robertson, in my opinion, is that guy. And Jack Flaherty, again, I see upside to, and I will talk about him more on the future, more on the platform in the future for sure, because we have to have more rotation talks. But for now, I will just leave you on the rotation front of this is a simple question. Do you guys want the Mets to add at least one more starter this offseason? Give me a yes or a no in the chat. Even if that starter is a Jack Flaherty type, even if that starter maybe isn't like a true, like Luis Castillo, where you're seeing the upside. Flaherty's numbers are great baseline, but we also know that Flaherty struggled a bit in postseason. So we know that there's two sides of the coin. We know that Flaherty has struggled with injuries in recent years, so you're investing a little bit there on the risk. But I'm just curious, in general, on the Mets adding another starter, even if it is not beyond, say, a number 3 starter, right? Could be a depth pickup, more along those lines. Just let me know. Are you guys in favor of one? Because for me, I think it's foolish if the Mets don't land another starter this offseason. Regardless of the depth that they currently have, you can literally never have enough. Never have enough, especially with the depth that a team like the Dodgers has, and even with all the inevitable injuries that they have every year. I think they absolutely need to continue to barking up that tree. Let's also not forget, and I'm not going to forget this, because Andy Martino and even my guy Will Salmon, they've reported that they've heard, nothing on that front. But Jeff Passan a couple weeks ago did report pretty much heading in the new year that the Mets were still shopping for a starter. And that was separate from Roki Sasaki. So that alone is why I have confidence that the Mets are not done adding to the rotation yet this offseason. Now, if it's another starter or more depth, obviously it'll be more underwhelming, but you can never have enough depth. I would obviously love them to land more of a starter that can be a number 3 for them, number 3, number 2, or at best a number 1. But if you can land a starter that's in that 1 through 4 range, I'm more than happy with that, right? And there's a couple not only in the free agent market that the Mets may consider, and we'll talk about that in the near future, along with the trade options as well. I'm actually going to put in my notes right now something that I don't want to forget for a future topic that we're going to touch on in the platform right now. Not going to spoil it, though, because I don't want to ruin the convo ahead of time. So, there we go. Okay. Hauser needs to go to Japan. That's funny, Adrian Hauser. Oh my God. Let's not talk about Adrian Hauser. Let's have ourselves a good rest of our night, okay? And not a frustrating one when we talk about Adrian. But guys, we're going to get close to wrapping up the live show. So before we get out of here, I would love to answer whatever final questions, comments, and concerns you guys got for me. I didn't want to be too long-winded tonight. We're already an hour and 10 in this one. If I didn't trim anything for my replay viewers, you may see after the fact that's trimmed. I'm not sure. But guys, also be on the lookout tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern. I will be live there in the Bleacher Report app, not only tomorrow, but Thursday and Friday, like I am every single week, all in season and off season long. Yes, so as we get to the regular season, this will continue as well, everybody. I am a daily MLB host there in the Bleacher Report app. You guys can check me out there 4 p.m. Eastern sharp, right around that time. So it might just be a couple minutes late because I'm Wardy. That tends to happen. And we cover all the latest hot button topics in Major League Baseball. So tomorrow, don't be shocked if we talk more on some of the topics that we touched on today, either in relation to the Mets or Major League Baseball as a whole, especially in the case of like more on the Blue Jays, more potentially on the Mets, more on other teams. If we find out any news from now up until 4 p.m., we will certainly touch on that as well. But be on the lookout there in the BR app tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday, along with all the individual video content and live stream content that we will have here on the WardyNYM platform. All close fan. Joey, enlighten us what you're referring to. What's the first game you'll be at this season, Jack? Great question. I've yet to figure that out. I would love to be at one of the first games of the year. That's a goal of mine. But if I'm not there for opening day, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. As long as I'm there in relative time there in the first couple weeks of the season, I'll be happy. I don't go to too many games in the early beginning of the year. More so because of weather than anything else. I'm not a fan of being at baseball games and shivering my ass off. I'm absolutely the guy that wants to be there on a summer night, 100%. But I am a little bit more inclined to hit games more earlier this year just because my schedule is going to be a lot more hectic as we continue, as we get in the latter half of the season, especially as a trade deadline and all the news, and then leading into potential postseason play. I'm going to have less availability in attending games down the stretch as I will have earlier in the year, more than likely, just based on what I'm probably doing for myself. Because as much as I want to attend all the most fun games possible for the Mets, one, sadly, I don't live around the corner as I reside in Pennsylvania, and two, I also am determined to cover as much as I possibly can this year, just like I have the past couple of years. So that alone is why I have to sacrifice attending games, but it's all for good reason. You read an article that the Mets are checking in there. Wilfredo, can you enlighten me where the hell that article was? Because I either missed it completely or it's a bunch of nonsense of just someone saying why it would be a good idea. Webb's Love with the $5 holla. If the Mets sign Profar, Iglesias, Robertson to a one-year deal to close out our offseason, would he be satisfied? Iglesias third base, Vientos Vientos first base, Profar DH. See, my problem is that I don't like Iglesias at third base. Like, I don't love that, you know? I think the Mets will honestly be more in platooning things and with the kids than anything else. Would I be satisfied? Not fully, to answer your question. I would be content, but not fully satisfied. I would be disappointed still that they didn't do a little bit more on the offensive end with Alonso, with that being the big cloud as to he's going elsewhere or something. Let's see. I will try not to doubt you on the show. I was lazy. No worries, Rebecca. It's okay. I'm lazy with a lot of other things, just like pretty much everything else in life. So trust me, you're not at fault. Let's see. Did you get anything else in that article? Think you can make it on June 11th, Jack? Possibly. I will tell you guys right now, we are in the early goings of trying to figure out some outings this year. And if we get some outings that happen this year, everybody, I want to know if you guys would be interested in partaking things like a pre-sale. That is something that you guys will not be surprised to see happen before leading up to the regular season that I may propose to you guys on the platform. Because depending on how many of you guys are willing and are going to sign up for the pre-sale, will then indicate if we're going to be able to do a full swing of a full actually at the ballpark outing, one, if not multiple games this year. This is something that we have not gotten the chance or privilege to do in recent years on the platform, as something that I'm really trying to prioritize this year to make happen because we haven't done it yet. I get sworn by followers all the time when I'm at games and when I'm, regardless of what state I'm in at games, and even when I'm not, even in Mets-related settings, people come up to me all the time when they find me, recognize a short schmuck that is me. So I really would love to test the waters and see how much we could come together and do community events this year, the way that we haven't gotten a chance to in previous years. It wouldn't be happening a crazy amount, naturally, because they're a lot of money to get involved. They're a big process to do, and you know, I am a one-stop shop for everything when it comes to setting this all up. But I'm damn excited at the prospect of it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if you guys will partake in something like that. I think that'll be a hell of a lot of fun, especially if we do it for like a rivalry night, you know, for like a Friday night game or something like that. Oh, also, guys, Jesse Winker, news conference tomorrow. Be on the lookout. It was just announced by the Mets. 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll be live there on the Mets YouTube channel and on SNY's YouTube and socials. The Wardy Way section. That's funny, Edwin. Not Edwin, Eddie. That's hilarious. The Wardy Way. That's hilarious. Wait, let's see. Where did it come from? Hold on. It was written by a fan. That's why I don't care. Sorry. I just see opinion pieces are fine, but like, I'm not here to cover fellow opinion pieces constantly from fans. If I'm going to cover opinion pieces, they're more so from like, you know, writers, reporters that have been involved for a while that have been also connected and hearing things, which goes in hand as to why their opinions are the way that they are. Like Jeff Passan saying, I think Juan Soto's going to be a Met. That carries some weight in my opinion because it's Jeff Passan versus just a fan saying, hey, Soto's going to be a Met. You know, there's different levels of this a little bit. Alrighty, folks. I think that's going to do it for our live show tonight. On your way out, please make sure to continue smashing like and subscribe on. Thank you guys again so much for the endless support. It really does mean a lot. And be on the lookout as, again, we will have new content out for you guys as soon as mañana, whether that's a video, a live stream, both, one of the two. Be on the lookout. Until then, have a fantastic rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. This is your guy, Wardy, signing out. Let's go Mets, baby.